Olwen, Hugh, we're here talking about barriers to helping different groups of people get back into employment. Tell us a bit more about it.
Well, certainly in this workshop I've been attempting to focus on some of the barriers for ex-prisoners going out into the world of work again. And there are a range of barriers. There are some legislative barriers. There isn't any legislation that really provides helpful routes back into employment for folk. There are also attitudinal barriers, excuse me, in terms of people's resistance to people who've carried out offences and including them back into the workforce. And then there are also some structural barriers. There are certain types of professions and qualifications, for example taxi driving, where a requirement is to be of good character, and quite often it can be seen that if you've had a criminal record that may mean in some people's eyes that there's a question mark over your appropriateness as a driver of some kind. So there are all of those barriers that need to be overcome, as well as the fact that very many of the folk who go into prison will, on their initial assessment, have a reading and numeracy level of around about age 11. And so therefore their basic levels of skills to be able to perform in a marketplace, a workplace is actually quite poor. So we would put together training packages to lift their skills, and we would try to work through with them how, if they're asked at interview about their offence, they do it in a way that's neither defensive but as open and transparent as possible. And on the other side, we attempt to work with employers to reduce both their resistance and their attitudinal issues around the work and the opportunities that they may want to offer to ex-prisoners.
It's interesting with the accessibility project, which is part of rehab enterprises. Working with people with disabilities, placing people with disabilities into employment. It's interesting to listen to some of the barriers you're talking about, because you can nearly say for the environmental barriers, or we have the same, where we look at the environment and how suitable is the environment for people with disabilities to actually work in. And we actually provide employers with the tools, if you like, or we provide with the skill to be able to go in and look at their own environment, and indeed come in with professionals afterwards to take a look and assist them with making adjustments to the environment. If that is the case, if it is an environmental barrier, I think more so. I think the environmental barrier is very easy it's tangible, isn't it? In other words, if the door handle is up here and someone in a wheelchair can't actually reach it, and we know that. If we're looking at the paving that we were looking at walking outside, which is quite uneven, okay, you can go in and you can actually put in just better paving that's actually slip. So very tangible, very fixable. It may take resources and money, but you can see it. The second barrier you mentioned there is one that we come across, and it's ongoing, and it's of course that attitudinal barrier, and very much working with employers and staff and managers around sort of their attitudes to people with disabilities. And we talk about the different models, and one of the models there is sort of the medical model, and this is where when you ask somebody when you ask a person what do you think a person with a disability can do, they'll often say, well, they're nice and they're nice to have around, and they'll smile a lot because it's generally very nice, and they belong, and it's but really they don't belong in my place of employment. Really, their capabilities, they wouldn't be able to do what we'd be looking for them to do. So you have that. So we're working with those attitudes, and we're very much looking at the social model. We're saying, well, okay, what is it that you're looking for the person to do? Can we provide some on-the-job training? What sort of supports can we provide for them in order that they can actually do the job? There definitely has to be some sort of match around sort of skills and competencies that employers look for. You can't just take one person and say, oh, okay, well, they're going to fit into this job because we're going to provide support. I mean, there has to be interest from the person's point of view. And from the employer, there has to be some sort of willingness to allow the person a period of time to train on the job as well. So that's what we do, and we provide that follow-up support, and where more often than not it's assisting employers, supervisors, sometimes even staff to allow them to do their job. In other words, if it was me working and I was doing something that wasn't in accordance with policies and procedures, my supervisor or manager would have no problem coming over to me and saying, you can't do that. Whereas if we're talking with someone with a disability, there's actually a barrier there. It's one of those attitudes. They come and they say, can I go over and say to Hugh, he can't do that? How do I actually say it? So for a lot of what we do, it's coaching, occasional, it's a more mentoring, but it's not on the job support around what you can actually do and how you can encourage any of your employees to perform. Performance management.
Well, interestingly you say that, because in our world, one of the issues that employers will ask is, can we ask a question at recruitment about the criminal record? And I mean, you know, it's permissible to ask a question. You may not elicit the best answer doing it that way, but it's certainly permissible to ask the question. But the reality is that most employers don't understand the answer to the question. So if somebody comes forward and says what type of offence it was, you know, if I say GBH, we know that's grievous bodily harm, but what does that actually mean? And so we run workshops for recruiters in firms, taking them through what are the types of terms that will be disclosed to them. Because in a world where increasingly people are being asked to disclose their convictions in order to work in various sets of circumstances, either in security settings or looking after vulnerable people in the caring professions, there is a requirement now on employers to vet and to use various procedures to glean the criminal record. So if they then can make no judgment on the information that they get, it's not really all that helpful a process. So we're trying to up their skills in terms of being able to make an objective decision, as opposed to just a blanket, we don't have anyone. Because the reality is, in the UK, 1 in 3 men under the age of 35 has a criminal conviction of some level or other. That's a fairly big pool of people you choose not to recruit.
So some similarities and some differences in your programs. Well, thanks very much.